Konnichiwa.
Welcome to the Jandals in Japan podcast.
Kia ora, Catherine.
Konnichiwa, Jane. It's so warm, is it not?
What was the photo you just sent me? How many degrees was it? Was it 42?
It feels like 42 with the
feels
humidity.
like 42, yeah.
It's actually 36, but that's
Okay.
Tokyo temperature. And this is early July, people.
Yeah.
So we're experiencing a bit of warmth.
Yeah. You're in Tokyo. Up here in Iwaki, we're not quite as hot as you, as I always say. 31, crikey.
Yeah, it's pretty warm for where you are.
30 feels like 37. Oh my goodness.
Well, goodness me. I notice there's a lot of people, if they're in the convenience store at the moment, they sort of hang and wait. And then if it's right near, one of mine is right near a pedestrian crossing. So people hold inside the convenience store before
and then they rush out
the road. Yeah, then they all run out and grab the shade again. But there's all these little techniques you learn in summertime in Japan to actually cope.
Yeah. Get your
right.
sun
And
umbrella.
luckily the other day I was given a gift, which was a thing around your neck that you soak with water. And even just that can actually help you to cool you down.
Totally.
Right, a little necktie from one of my buddies. Yeah. So that's one thing. What did you say just then?
A wet cloth around your neck is so
a wet
cooling.
Cloth, and you said a
sun umbrella. That's like your portable shade. Huge difference in having.
It's not embarrassing to have one in Japan either. People do have them everywhere.
Even men, have them.
I saw a guy with one yesterday in Harajuku. It was quite surprising, but I saw him. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I was on duty for baseball over the weekend, and I had a parent who was in the starting stages of heat stroke that I was looking after, and I was like, crikey. And I was like, what did he do wrong? And the thing was, I think he'd just been drinking water.
Water I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
What's in your drink bottle? And he's like, water. I'm like, you need water and some kind of salt, or mugi cha seems to be the magical drink that it is, this sweet tea that people drink here. That has a lot of minerals in it.
That
keeps you feeling well. The kids all had mugi cha in there. They're like, they've got these like massive 2-liter thermos bottles that they bring along. But this parent only was drinking water. I'm like, dude, you gotta have some salt candy. Here, get this into you.
Yeah, salt candy is
stuff
great,
to cool
isn't it?
down. Very, very, very dangerous. So, that's the second case of heat stroke I've dealt with in the last week.
Wow, and that's in your area. I mean, it is a little cooler where you are overall, so that's really surprising to hear, and we just really need to be careful. I mean, here am I not thinking of, it is actually happening, a visit to New Zealand, the other side of the temperature scale. I'm a little concerned what my body's going to do with this reaction from hot to cold, and I think that's really important that we keep tabs on ourselves.
Yeah.
So not only the clothing we're wearing and the keeping well watered or well heated, I can't even say that word right now, but yes, well heated wherever you are, but also just be careful and know that people are probably at the end of their tether at the moment, even though summer's only started.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Summer has just started. Our bodies have not adjusted yet. Our brains are struggling with looking into the future and going, holy crap, there's 3 months of this still to go before it starts to cool down again, maybe. So I may have had a small panic attack about that this morning.
Yes, I will get a little reprise, but also just, let's be careful. Let's be kind, knowing that people are probably frazzled, like literally.
And if you're coming, I've actually heard that a lot of people are planning to come to Japan this summer.
Really?
Because there's such a pent-up demand for people to come to Japan. Yeah. So make sure you got your salt candies or your sports drink on you, because that will literally save you from potentially having a heat exhaustion situation on your hands, which is not fun.
Not fun at all. Goodness me. There you go. You got the warnings for the weather on your way here, and a good Jandals episode always covers a little bit of the weather. You know that.
Like to keep you up to date, all the latest happenings in Japan.
But we also have a great episode today.
Who is on our show today, Catherine?
Well, we're talking with Mel Barber, and Mel is Managing Director at NEC in New Zealand. She got that position just after 18 months starting with them. She was originally in their field delivery. Her love language is talking all about tech
Tech
and
and digging holes and
dinging and
cables and
pieces of things. So she joined NEC from another company where she did fiber cabling for remote New Zealand. And it's a really great story that she tells us. We had the chance, Jane and I, to meet her in Beppu last year at the JNZBC conference. And so we wanted to catch up, hear what's going on in the tech business, and also just hear her fresh tips for how you deal across cultures in this business that she's in. It was really, really fun.
yeah, she's working in NEC in New Zealand. Japanese company. How does that work with being a Japanese company but being in New Zealand? Very, very interesting discussion. We hope you enjoy it. Kia ora, Mel. Welcome to the Jandals in Japan podcast. Great to have you on the show today.
Kia ora, it's lovely to see you both again.
Yeah, so we will start with our warm-up question for you. When you are visiting Japan, what is the must-buy item that you take home to New Zealand? I know you've been to Japan a couple of times, and I think you had a souvenir list when you were here last time of things your family wanted.
I did. So my daughter actually lived in Sendai for a year when she was 15. So as soon as she knew I was going over in November, which was actually my first time ever in Japan, I did get quite a long laundry list, mainly just snack items from 7-Eleven. So it was literally just all the different everything she couldn't get that she'd been craving over there. Funnily enough, the noodles that we got at the conference in Beppu, that I may have forgotten to declare when I came back into New Zealand, they were delicious. So I would actually make an effort to hunt those down.
Oh, the noodles. They were special noodles, weren't they? I'm remembering now.
Special, yes. Really good. I did have to give up half of them to my daughter, and they were back to the student flat in Dunedin, but definitely worth being on the lookout for next time.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Something special about them, though. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, yeah.
I think it was one of the ingredients. It'll come to me at 3 o'clock this morning.
Okay.
I'll bring you a message and be like, that's what it was.
And we'll be very relieved when we get that message. You've solved that mystery for us. Thank you.
We've been awake the whole night.
Catherine, what do you bring back from New Zealand? What's a
from New
must?
Zealand. I thought you were going to ask me from Japan, what do I take back when I go back to New Zealand?
What do you bring back from New Zealand that's a must bring back to Japan when you come back?
Ooh, I used to always bring back chocolate items and licorice, and I think I still bring a little bit of licorice, but I guess I love bringing back some of the really fancy peanut butters that are around in New Zealand that you just can't get in Japan at all, right? Peanut butter in Japan is sweet, often just smooth or crunchy, but New Zealand has got this amazing range now, right? Is it figs?
Fogs, and then there just seems to be a new one including peanut butter for your dogs.
Wow, there you go.
Excellent. Low salt, I'm sure.
Ones that have got everything in there, like all the nuts and all the bits and pieces. So I love that. I don't have a lot of it, but when I want a treat, then that's what I'll probably buy. I know after we finish recording, Jane, I'm going to go, I should have said something else, but I thought you're going to ask me what I take from Japan to New Zealand.
Which is what, Catherine, I'll let you say.
Okay, thank you.
Thought about it.
No, it was because I've been asked to bring back some really, really brilliant, gorgeous sake this time. And I thought, where am I going to find out about great sake to take home? And of course, I went on and talked to Wayne Shannon, who's one of our guests on the podcast, and asked him for his very expert opinion. So I've got the top list now of what to go and buy.
Oh, wow.
I just wanted to say that.
Can you share that with me? Because, I would like to surprise a certain someone in my family with some special sake.
Okay, I will do that. Well, how about you, Jane? If you were going back to New Zealand, what would you take? And then vice versa, what would you bring back here?
Okay, well, curry roux, the curry sauce that you can make curry with, I always take that back, because it's like $10 for a box in New Zealand, and also takenoko no sato, which is the baby bamboo shoot like cookies with chocolate thing.
So
it's bamboo shoots. It's called takenoko no sato. There's also one called kinoko no yama, which is the mushroom mountain ones. So mushrooms and
But they're actually chocolate, right?
but they're
Yeah.
chocolate and cookies, but they're
And
shaped
they're in
like
the shape
yeah.
like a bamboo. And
But I prefer
Yeah.
the takenoko no sato, which
Okay.
is very, very tasty. That's to take back and to bring back from New Zealand, underpants and Vegemite.
Not together, right? But yeah.
Not together, no, but a supply of underpants and a lot of Vegemite. Yes,
Okay.
we love a good Vegemite on toast here with my
Oh,
Kiwi
wow.
kids here.
Well, there we go. Now we know our passions. So I'll put some Vegemite in the suitcase when I come back.
If you don't
Shortly.
mind, we will welcome any extra supply for our stash of Vegemite.
Well, there's the warm up, right? We're really so warm over here. We don't need any more warming up. It's the middle of summer for us in Japan. But Mel, welcome to the show. You're managing director for NEC New Zealand. You were appointed to that role just 18 months into working with them. We're so excited to have you back. We say back because we saw you in Beppu at the Japan New Zealand Business Council meeting in November. And I'd seen you before, I think when we were in Auckland, but hadn't really got to have the chats that we did when we were in Beppu in November. We wanted to bring you back, talk about how things are going with your work with NEC, and also just, some insights perhaps from the conference that you gained when you were there. So we'll put your full bio into the show notes, but give us a little background there before NEC, where you came from and all of that, so that our listeners can hear where you've been in Aotearoa and your work today.
Cool. So I didn't really follow a particularly traditional route. So I had my daughter 3 weeks before I turned 21. So she's now doing honours at Otago, studying migraines of all things, and never really had that path. And it's really interesting seeing her, and she's so sure of what she wants to do, and this is what I'm going to study, and this is how it goes. And I've always been a bit like, I don't know, I'm sure it'll come. To spend most of my career actually in telecommunications, and probably still at heart consider myself a bit more of a utilities girl rather than a tech girl. So quite happy talking about, directional drilling and trenching and fibre testing and all of those fun things. It's my happy place if I've got to talk about work stuff. And my last role there was actually leading a fibre rollout to all the little small towns. And it was cool. It was nice to be able to give back. You were bringing connectivity to these tiny little towns. So if you're thinking from Christchurch, places like Lethfield and Lethfield Beach, and like genuinely changing those communities' ways of being able to connect with the world. It was a really cool. It was a cool role to have, and nice to be able to make a genuine difference.
Yeah.
And then you move to NEC to look after their field force, and it all became a bit of a whirlwind after that, to be fair.
Wow, what drew you to NEC from where you work? Because as you say, they're different areas of work. So what brought you in there?
So I was definitely ready for a change. So as much as I don't ever plan my career, which I keep thinking I must get onto that at some point, it was time. I got to the point where my project was just ticking over, and everyone was, health and safety was good, and the client was happy, and we win more work. And I was kind of like, well, I've stopped making a difference, right? I've stopped figuring out ways of how to make this better. And so I was like, ready for my new challenge. To be fair, looking after the kind of field force at NEC was different enough to be a challenge, but still enough the same to feel that little bit safe. I'd been at my last company for 12 years, so it was a big thing to change. And I think NEC still got that ethos, right? Like, we've got some really cool technology that's actually genuinely just cool, but we've also do a lot to genuinely make people's lives better. Like, we work in health, we're developing vaccines using AI. We've got a really cool program in third world countries where we adapted our fingerprint technology so that young kids can have their fingerprints done so they know when they're due for their next vaccine. And so it's kind of like, actually, it's still a company that, like, some of it's just really cool and would make, makes my life easier, but there's actually still that part of being at a company that wants to actually improve the world in a genuine sense, not just a kind of tagline on the website somewhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was thinking, now what does NEC do these days? Because I was thinking, do they make computers? And so I had to go and educate myself. But tell us a little bit more about that. You've just given us a little taster there of some of the cool things that NEC is doing.
So I think I'd probably been at NEC for 6 months before, like every week I wasn't going, really? NEC do that?
Mm.
What do you, NEC do what? So if you're looking at it from a New Zealand sense, the old telephone exchanges that used to have a person sitting in it and put it in there, NEC actually manufactured and then installed and maintained all of the switching equipment that went into all the phone exchanges. So before there was Chorus and Spark, there was Telecom, and before that there was a New Zealand Post Office. So we started in New Zealand in 1999 as NEC, but literally putting these big pieces of equipment into telephone exchanges to automate it. We do a lot of work in biometrics, but the good biometrics, right? Like there's a bit of a, you say biometrics, people go, oh my gosh, it's Big Brother. You're watching. What are you getting about us?
What are you doing with my data? Yeah.
But it's the good biometrics, and it's the opt-in technology and the, self-sovereign data. So you own all of your data. Smart transport's another big thing we do here in New Zealand. And then, so that's putting the driver device bus like units on buses. So when a bus says it's 4 minutes away, it's actually 4 minutes away.
Nice.
As opposed to, it's like, could be 4, could be 2.
Could be half an hour.
But then, wider afield, we do a lot in that research space. We also do submarine cables. So NEC is actually one of the largest companies that do the large submarine cables, the actual physical dropping a cable, kilometers through the sea and then switching it on either side. So it's, every time you sit there and go, you need to talk about this in NEC, there's something we do. So it's kind of cool. There's a heap of opportunity out there.
Amazing. Yeah.
Does it feel very Japanese in NEC New Zealand, or is it more New Zealand than Japan? Is there a Japan flavour in the company there?
Yeah. I was amazed when I started just how autonomous we actually are in New Zealand. And it's that really nice balance. So my last company, and I believe it's changed now, was run out of Australia. And it was all, you went to Australia to do anything. So literally, I want to put someone on a training course that had to go back to Australia. This is really autonomous. We set our budgets working really closely with the business units in Japan so that everybody's all aligned, we're all on the same page. They're there as a really good help and support mechanism to be able to say, actually, give us some strategy. What's the solution? Can we do this? Can we do that? But actually, they're pretty happy to let us do our own thing and build relationships here and just do what's right for our local market, as opposed to saying, actually, just because we do this in Japan, you must do it in,
Right.
you must do submarine cables in New Zealand. I mean, it'd be a pretty small market, probably struggle a little. So,
Perhaps, yes, right.
Yeah.
But do you have people from head office coming down to New Zealand quite a bit? People from the board? Do you have audits? Do you have any of the staff coming from the different business units visiting you?
a lot more now. So now we're getting back in the groove of things post-COVID. I believe Dr. Endo's actually, who's the chairman of the NEC board, is actually going to make it to the JNZBC conference this year in November. So that'll be nice to meet him. A bit of a failed attempt in Beppu as he was ill. So there's more of that. We're also getting a lot more globalized. We've got someone in our team who's actually a Kiwi but reports into Japan, but works out of our Wellington office. And so there's a lot more of that that's starting to filter through, where you can live anywhere but actually report into Japan. We'll have our global folk come out and see us in, I think October was the latest time frame. So
right,
not hugely, but a lot more
now.
Conferences. They've kind of gone, oh, COVID's over. Actually, let's have. I think there's probably about 7 different conferences for different people across the business happening in the next 3 months. So
incredible, because when you joined, it was during COVID, right? And you joined as, I know, you were the head of the field delivery, and then you were the general manager of field delivery. But then in this 18-month span, you just got promoted up to general manager. What were your aspirations at that time when you joined the business, and how have things developed then? So, I mean, you joined in 2020, right? But when you actually went up to GM, things changed, don't they? So what happened, and what did you want to do with it? Because you talked about before about making a difference.
Yeah, and so I came, it was in the middle of one of our big lots. We'd had the first lockdown, it was before the second one, which was pretty horrendous if you're in Auckland, because it lasted that much longer and it rained the whole time, is how it felt at the time. But it was about, so NEC New Zealand was the field type force at the time. Most of them had been here since 1999, right? And they were the guys that would give you the shirt off their backs. They would do anything to, if there was a fault, they'd be there at 3:00 in the morning until it was fixed, right? But they weren't particularly good at embracing some of the good things that technology could bring, and just ways of doing things smarter. Things were still quite manual. And I remember saying to someone, well, how do you train somebody when they start? And they're like, we just train them. And I was like, yeah, but how do you know that they're competent? He's like, well, we'll just know when they are. Yeah. Yes, but so it was really
good point. Good questions, right? Great questions.
Used to training them up, and they'd be like, "It's right. I've seen Catherine do that a few times now. She'll be fine." So it was just kind of putting a bit more structure and a bit more kind of moving things forward without losing the essence of who they are. And we've still got guys in our Wellington office that have been here since 1999. Person that does biometrics for us. Basically, has been doing biometrics since biometrics was even a twinkle in somebody's eye. It was probably a twinkle in Glenn's eye, to be fair.
Wow, to work somewhere since 1999. I'm trying to think of all the things I've done since then. Oh, that's amazing, isn't it? It's sort of dedication. There's a reason why people stay at firms and companies, though, too, right?
Our Wellington office in particular, because that's where the bulk of our people are. So there's about 45 people at the Wellington office. The culture down there is phenomenal. We've got the football team that go out every week and play indoor football, a really active social club. And it's just more sausage rolls than you can shake your stick. There's always an excuse for someone to be making sausage rolls when I go down, but it's a really cool atmosphere. It's a nice culture.
Wow.
So you visited Japan last November when you came over for the JNZBC, and you were able to have your first visit with the Japan office. What were some of the differences you or not differences, but what were some of the interesting things you noted as a New Zealander coming to visit kind of head office?
Other than the security guard having to use his fingerprint to call the lift to get to the CEO's office. Wow. I was like, oh, I've gone into a James Bond film or something, and no one told. It's probably still that sense of, the hierarchical nature of it. So one of the senior VPs came down to meet the finance team, and I just found a spot on the floor somewhere, and I was just doing some work, and just the awe that people had because someone from senior management had come down and was taking the time to speak to them and to find out more about them and to build those relationships with them. Whereas in New Zealand, I walk into the office in Wellington when I go to visit, and I get a hi. It's quite different seeing that different working culture where if you're a senior manager, you're still almost that little bit removed from a number of the people. But they've made a big change there. I think they went from 9 levels of organisation structure down to 5. So they could break that down so that people that never felt they could have a voice with senior management can actually start being able to get their views heard, and because they've got some amazing ideas. So that was probably the biggest difference, I think. That and how empty the office was. So it was when things were still quite restricted due to COVID. So it was, every second seat was still blocked off, but there was probably 20% of people back in the office at the time on a good day, whereas we'd started to come in a lot more and actually and realise we actually quite like seeing each other in an office environment again.
How many days were you there for?
Not long, only 3 days.
Did you have to do some presentations, or they did presentations to you? Because often the presentation situation can be quite different between New Zealand and Japan.
Yes, I did. So I had someone from NEC Australia who we closely align with. Got to do this, but you've got to take a PowerPoint over. And I had meetings after meetings after meetings. My EA, bless her, made sure I had a gap after each meeting just so I could find my next meeting room. Just because it's such a massive office, and I'm like, okay, where am I going? Till the one I found out the meeting was actually down the road. I was like, I know where I'm going. This is perfect. I can find floor. And I was like, oh, it's a whole different building. So I did this amazing PowerPoint and I split it all up for all the meetings. I don't actually think I opened it once. It was more just that relationship building and being able to speak to people and get to know them. And a lot of people, you'd connected with via Teams or Zoom or emails, and actually be able to have a face-to-face conversation was nice, and it's helped going forward. You've got that relationship to be able to draw on.
It's funny, you had to go down the road to the meeting. It's that big.
Well, I don't know why, because there's no one in the office. Like,
don't they have two offices though? I feel they've got two offices. Like there's one in one section, then across the road and down the road a little bit towards the hotel. There's a hotel. I feel like they've got the second office there.
They do, and they've also got another office slightly further away where a lot of their wireless team kind of live over there. Because I was like, you can't see wireless. I was like, I don't even know where that is.
Because they're wireless.
Yeah, let's not even try and find that.
Is that just like a risk mitigation thing? Like if one building gets knocked out, then we have this other building, or like we could, function from this.
It could be the separate plan.
It could be, or it might have just, like, I think possibly pre-COVID, when everybody was in the office, 5 days a week, they probably got to the point where then actually we've got this whole new world of smart transportation. We better find them a home. Oh, there's nowhere really for them. We'll pop them down the road a little bit. And it is only kind of 200 meters away, which is quite good when you're rushing down a city, street in a city you've never been to before. But it was only, I think it was kind of that overflow type where they just couldn't all fit because everybody was in the office 5 days a week.
Yeah. All day long.
So you talked about hierarchy and meetings and getting to know people. What else has being in a Japanese company taught you about business etiquette and sort of the differences perhaps between how you might do something in New Zealand and when you're on the ground here with Japanese people and dealing with them directly? Has there been any things that have come up for you in that way?
I think a lot of it is being conscious that even though, so English is our global language at NEC, and, so many Japanese people speak just, such good English, especially when you compare it to my Japanese, which stops at the I can be polite level. There's my Japanese ending. But it's still being really conscious, I think, that even though there can seem to be that understanding, some things still get lost in translation. And then it's that being able to really understand where people are coming from. And because I find that's probably the biggest thing for me is the politeness is so deeply ingrained in the Japanese culture. The last thing anybody wants to say is that's a terrible idea. Or why would you want to do that? Or it'll never work, because everybody does. They want to make sure you're not losing face. They want to say that's a great idea. That's good. That's good. And you're like, well, can we do it? And then you're like, hello, could we do it? So I think that's probably been one of the biggest things, is just trying to figure, and that whole concept of nemawashi, which I think, we can do probably so much better here in New Zealand. I think we just tend to be a little bit, I'll go to a meeting and I'll have this idea and people will tell me if they like the idea or they don't like the idea. We're still pretty polite, to be fair. But I think that whole concept of nemawashi and being able to actually go and speak to people to socialize your idea before you get to that meeting room table can just have some real benefits in terms of being able to move things forward.
Yeah, because how else would you otherwise know when you get to a meeting and it's, great idea, that's a good idea, and it's not, right? They're really thinking it's not. How have you got to the point where they've told you that it's actually, we don't really like that? Is it just eventually come out with the lack of movement on the idea that you proposed? How has it worked in that way for you so that you actually know that it's not a good idea? Because it is, you just pulled out a really great point that Japanese will probably not tell you exactly that they don't like something, that something is difficult is probably a common answer. But how have you managed all that?
So I think I still keep my Kiwiness. So it was something, we did it last year and I was kind of like, I think this is just going to be a no. And I just had to say, look, we've got to the point now, you just have to tell me, are we going to do this or can we not do it? And if we can't do it, that's okay.
Right, but you gave some ease there, right? If it was a no, that's okay. Yeah.
So I think it's still keeping that kind of Kiwi directness to just say,
Mm.
look, we need to either move or not. But like you say, in that way that's not adversarial, and it's not right, either, you know, put up or shut up. It's actually, well, let's work through it. And is it something we need to look at in the future?
Mm.
And I'm like, yes, the future.
Yes, that's a great one, isn't it? The future.
future. Yeah.
Yes. Japanese has a lot of that sort of broad term, right? They sort of say someone will be here shortly, or in mamonaku, right? In a little moment, or in a moment, and you don't know how long that moment is. Yeah, there's quite a few of those sorts of terms in Japan. We'll be back in touch in a moment. You think, how long is
could
that
be
moment?
a week, could be 5 minutes. Yeah.
But that indirectness helps. But it sounds like you've got that really well mastered with the indirectness, but directness just where you need it, but giving them a little bit of softness to land as well.
And it's been so we have a new so we changed kind of direction a little bit last year, and we've still got one part of the business that's saying, well, your numbers have to be the same, you have to make the same revenue and the same operating profit. And I was like, well, I can't. And I think they struggle with that directness. But I think having met people face to face, it helps, because you can be yourself a little bit more. And I said, I can't do it. I said, unless you want to help, unless you can help me to be successful, I can't be successful by myself. So you might need to fund a head in New Zealand to help me drive sales. And they said, okay. And I went, okay.
Oh, that was easy.
Okay, good.
Amazing.
That's the amazing thing that you said.
Yeah.
You told
I can't
them,
be successful
how
by
can you
myself.
help me?
How can you help me?
Yeah. So,
I don't think we've had that one before, Jane.
That is
Have we?
fantastic. I'm
That's
getting
so
chills
fantastic.
hearing that little story there. But they were probably grateful for you for shortcutting them to what it was that you would need in order to be successful, and not having to go through 10,000 memos of because you just said okay, yes, or you said hi, right, which is what your average Japanese person would probably say. Hi, wakarimashita, yokai desu, I understand, I'm okay, it is done, kind of thing. We're gonna figure out how to be successful now. But you were just like, I can do this if you give me X. And
if you give me this. Yeah. Well, that's completely logical, isn't it? And also just basic, but sometimes we don't even do that. That's a great learning.
And we've been pushing a lot of the, you don't ask, you don't get type mentality. So we've got an innovation lab in our Wellington office, and we want to do a big, amazing launch. We did in October last year. It's like, surely someone in Japan's got some marketing budget. They don't want to spend, they haven't spent yet. And so it was actually, can you help fund it? And they were like, okay. I was like,
there you go.
There was quite a lengthy report that was required at the end.
Course.
But I can do that. And in the lab,
how did you use our money? Of course, we should be accountable to that. But there you go. Ask, right?
Yeah.
And you'll get. Well, you've taken your investment in working in a Japanese company in New Zealand quite a lot further by becoming a corporate sponsoring member, right, of the Japan New Zealand Business Council. How's that been for you? Has it made things different? Being at the conference last year, for example, and you spoke on stage as well in one of the plenary sessions. Has that made things different for you as your focus, as your presence in New Zealand as NEC?
I probably don't do anywhere near as much as I should, but I think the benefit, particularly in going to the conference, but just being connected in is the connections that you make both here and in Japan, and just knowing that everybody's actually genuinely there to help you, right? Like there's a genuine want for people to succeed both here and in Japan, and you can just reach out to those people, and it's a great way to be able to introduce. We're both part of the JNZBC. It's a great introductory, that foot in the door, and then being able to build on top of that. So really looking forward to to seeing some old faces and some new friends when we go to the conference in November as well.
Yeah, uncovers this vast network of supporters of New Zealand and Japan that you just wouldn't know was there unless you actually go and you see and you hear these stories. It's amazing what is going on in the background that people just don't know about. Fantastic. So you've been at NEC for almost 3 years now.
Yep.
Have there been any major changes in the way that NEC in New Zealand interacts with NEC in Japan?
So last year. I should have checked that. But NEC Globe, NEC Japan have kind of realized that they can't be a Japan-centric company anymore. They can't sit in Japan and say, well, go forth, my country affiliates, and make us money, and we'll sit here and we'll tell you what to do. They really want to be a truly global company. And so that's led right down from the CEO. So there's a lot more of a focus now on the country affiliates. There's, 200 NEC companies around the world and, nearly 60 countries. So there's a lot of brain power out there, right? And a lot of amazing ideas. So a real change in focus from Japan to be more inclusive and to actually say, hey, do you know what? You're just as important. It's a little old New Zealand down there in the bottom of the Pacific. Actually, we do want your ideas, and you do some amazing things, and we do want you to be able to help set our strategy and decide what our solutions are going to be, as opposed to the previously being the other way and coming from Japan down. So it's a really exciting time. It's a genuine intent. It's still a learning curve, right? This is the transition year. It kicks in properly next year, but it's a massive change. And the benefits are going to be huge. We just need to, it's getting everybody on board, I think. And I think for Japan, it's such a big change. So you've got your C-suite all saying, this is amazing. This is such a good idea. Let's go and do it. Let's go. You've got your younger generation of employees going, this is exciting. This is cool. Let's go. But then you've got that kind of middle layer where it's just such a different way of working, where they're like, that sounds great, but how do I do it? How do I do it? What do I do? Like,
where's my manual for this?
There's somebody written down how to did it last time.
It's an important point, though. It's like for that announcement to be made that we want your input from all the different parts of global offices. To get to that has been a board decision and all the things that go on behind there. So when they actually come to that point and ask for your input, they really want it.
Yes.
And so it's really important as a New Zealand company then, for example, to actually give it. And I think the way that you're giving it is going to be important, but to do what they say when they've actually gone to that extent of asking for your input.
For a small company, we're only 75 people at the moment. And I sit there and I think about, the person who heads up our cloud services. We've got a global, people and culture new system that's being implemented. And I look at that and I look at our head of biometrics and I was like, because we've got a lot of opinions for a small company. None of us are backwards at coming forward. We all actually take sometimes you've just got to pretend that everybody's as on board as they say that they are, right? So you just say, well, actually, we're all doing this. So and then you can just drive, pull them along with your enthusiasm and this is what we are now. We're a global company. Like, this is what we said we're going to do. So let's do it. And they're kind of like, I've got no reason not to. Okay, I'll just go with the force of nature. That's one of many people in New Zealand that just push things along to get it done.
I know there's a group of companies in Auckland and the heads of them, this is a group of Japanese companies that get together. Is it still something that with you and with others that you all get together as a Japanese companies in New Zealand sort of network?
Not that I've been involved in. And I have decided that this year should be my year of networking and being able to get out there now. I kind of feel like know what I'm doing most days.
Maybe invite them over to your place and see. Yeah.
Well, that's it, especially for those that are based in Wellington where we've got our lab. It's cool because there's things to touch and feel and, play with, as opposed to just kind of saying, our Auckland office is pretty bland. I'll be like, come and sit in our boardroom.
Yeah.
It's got a TV. It's amazing.
Yeah, okay. Well, by the time we see you at the JNZBC conference in November, we look forward to hearing about that one meeting you've had where you invited everybody to Wellington and had a communication.
Maybe we should
across
pop into Wellington and check out this.
Well, you should. You're more than welcome.
You'd be up for that, wouldn't you, Catherine?
Indeed. Well, we do have the one big question we ask everybody, Mel, and you're going to get it right now. And that's your one nugget, your one absolute one gem of advice that you would say from your own experience now with being with NEC and working with Japan and with Japanese people in a Japanese company, something that would be really useful perhaps with other Kiwis who are thinking about business with Japan. Is there something that comes up for you?
I think it goes back to what I was saying before. Like, you don't want to lose your Kiwiness and just that let's just get on and do it type of attitude. It's obviously tempering it so that we're not quite as brash and upfront. That's not going to help things. You know, that whole don't ask, don't get mentality, that being able to ask what you want with a smile, right? And then kind of giving people an out, but not really, but just being able to keep on and not being afraid to ask for what it is that you want, because I think there is that thing of, it is hierarchical and you've got to ask the right person and you've got to. Sometimes it's actually about just going, do you know what? They're going to forgive me. They'll say it's a gaijin, she doesn't know. And sometimes you just say, I didn't know. Oh, I was supposed to ask that person. Oh, what have I asked?
Now I know.
Now I know. But since I've already asked you, keeping some of that, you know, that Kiwi way of let's just get on and get it done and give it a go and see what happens.
Right.
As opposed to getting too caught up in, I must follow the right process.
Yeah, there's a real gem there, right? With the maybe asking someone by mistake, but kind of like, I've asked you anyway, so being a bit cute about it. And,
it's much easier to ask for forgiveness later.
Oh, good on you, Mel. I can see that you're making big steps in this universe.
They're lucky to have you over there. Amazing.
Yeah, what do you think it takes though for Kiwis? Is it that? Is it more of that? Bring more of that energy to be successful when working with Japan? Is there some X factor that we've got as Kiwis, as New Zealanders in that little country down in the South Pacific, as you said?
I think we've got the reputation, right, as Kiwis in general, of being the number 8 wire and the innovators and good ideas, and I think it's just playing on that and going, actually, you know, New Zealand as a whole punches above its weight, whether it's sport or good ideas or science. We do those things really well, and so I guess just living that way, right? Just going, well, actually, this is who we are. We can do anything on the smell of an oily rag. We may not have, you know, $1 million budgets to be able to spend on things, but we can still achieve great things.
Initiative, isn't it? It's that initiative that Kiwis have that might be lacking in other places. Yeah. What are you seeing in Japan that is trending that you think, oh, I'd love to see more of that happening, or somebody should do this? This would be a great idea or business. Anything you're noticing? It's from your position in New Zealand, right? Yeah,
and I think, you know, when I look at the kind of NEC solutions and what we're doing, like some of the stuff we do over there in terms of ticketing and solutions. So there's stores now where you can pay with your iris, you can pay by your face. There's one of the stadiums in Tokyo where your iris can actually be your ticket. And that's how you get it.
I was there the other day.
Yes. So you can pre-register when you're there, you pre-register, and then you can in and out having to show your ticket. And I think that type of stuff is exciting because I'm quite an impatient person, right? So anything that cuts down my waiting time to do anything is always going to be. And I think that's going to grow, but it comes back to, you know, what we talked about in terms of that self-sovereign identity and people feeling comfortable that it's your data and you own it and you choose who to share it with, as opposed to this big brother organization who's now got all of your data and they're going to potentially go and do nefarious things with it if that's what they choose to do. And I think the more that becomes mainstream in places like Japan, it will then flow through, which, I can't wait for, you know. And Miami Airport NEC technology lets you board your plane with your face.
Wow.
So no, you know, there's always that person in front of you with their passports at like the bottom of their bag because they didn't know they needed it for an international flight. And then the boarding pass doesn't scan. All of that goes. You literally walk on a plane. So all of that stuff. I can't wait.
Yeah, I was at Tokyo Dome recently, and they had the iris scanning thing, and I was like, how do I get that? Because I was like, my tickets, and I've got my 2 kids with me, and I've been outside a concert. It was for Maroon 5, right? And people were melting down because they could not download their tickets from because your tickets sort of was in 2 hours or something. You could download it to get into the concert, and the Wi-Fi could not handle what was the number of people trying to download their tickets. This is to be like environmentally friendly, right? So we're not printing 1 million tickets every day for this concert. And yeah, people couldn't get into the concert. And luckily, I downloaded my ticket like 20 minutes before and I had
Yeah.
time for it to download and we got in smoothly. But the people around me were losing their minds because they're like, we're missing the concert. And I'm like, oh my God, please don't start. Like, beating on the poor little person who's letting people in the gate. Yeah. So iris scanning technology could be an excellent option for everyone going to the Tokyo Dome and various other things in the near future.
Yeah, whether it's your iris or your face, the more that the idea of it becomes mainstream, it just opens up so many more possibilities. So we've got the technology we've got for biometrics. You can actually put into like rest homes where it could actually look at Jane's gait and how she's walking and then go, actually, she's walking funny today. Actually, we're going to get the nurse. She hasn't said anything. We're going to get the nurse just to go and check because she's not walking how she normally walks. So the ability to do that type of stuff just makes people's lives genuinely better, but it's still that mindset. And I was thinking about it, when you go and buy your bottle of wine from the supermarket here, you have to be checked if you're over 18. Sadly, I don't get asked very often anymore, but you still got to have the person come and push the button, right?
Someone still comes, right, to register and
someone is looking from a distance saying, oh yes, she's definitely not 18.
So you want to cut that step out somewhere.
So you can.
It's a job that someone has to do.
And again, you're choosing to share, right, your information. And it doesn't say actually Catherine was born on this date and therefore she's over 18. It just says this person is over 18. And lets your transaction go through. So it's not sharing your personal data, but then but people still get upset, and it's something. Then you remind them that when they signed up for their loyalty card for their supermarket, they actually gave them their name, their date of birth, where they live. So you've already given them
all your purchasing history as well.
So people kind of, I think it's just a mental thing. I think that society will move forward with the more that we can show that it's safe and that it's secure and that it's not just Big Brother running off with your date of birth. You look at all the data breaches now, right? It's happens without biometrics being involved.
Right. Well, what's coming up for you? Are there any activities or promotions that you're doing, or are you planning to come to Japan before we see you again in November at the JNZBC conference?
So probably not Japan this year. So we've got a lot going on. There's a few contracts that'll come out in the next little while on LinkedIn and such like. But yeah, certainly, for people that are in Wellington or visiting Wellington, the biometrics lab that we've got, if you've got an interest and you want to ask those questions in a safe place, you're not in this big crowd of 300 where you don't want to ask a question and people are like, oh, that was a dumb question.
You don't know.
You don't know that already. You can, more than welcome to come in and have a look, and I'll give you the high level view, but we've got some amazing guys there that can take you right through all of it. Some of the work we've done with police. We've got a face pay vending machine. So, so if you're at the gym and you don't have your money with you because you're at the gym, you can just go and get your protein shake out of the vending machine using your face. So some really cool things that you can actually play with and touch. And like I said, ask your dumb questions without feeling that you're going to be judged for it.
That's awesome.
Sounds good. I'll clear my conflicts check beforehand with a certain other company. And
they might not let you in the front door there, Catherine.
They may not. I might have to be blindfolded. Then none of it will work. But we'll get over that bit and see what happens. Congratulations on all you're doing between New Zealand and Japan. And thanks for letting us know so much about your journey to where you are now. We look forward to seeing you even go further and further as you continue in your business there. Thank you so much.
Oh, all right. Lovely to see you both. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
What an awesome Jando Mel is. Great to have her on the show sharing her gold nuggets of working in a Japanese organization in New Zealand that is very much still connected with Japan.
Very much. We need to get her a t-shirt. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
Put that on there, right? My advice for working in Japan. Wow, awesome. Absolutely
it works
awesome.
in Japan. I'm just thinking of every time my significant other has had a career challenge in his company. He's just asked and they've gone, okay, we'll figure something out for you. but
Yeah.
he's got it in the end.
Well, I mean, how can they actually read you what's inside your brain? It's pretty basic, actually, if we think about it, that you ask for what you need or want, because they're not going to interpret what you need and what you want and is necessary for you to do your job. So it makes sense.
And also not actually saying yes. And that was that when she was told, oh, we want this to be a success. And she's like, well, no, it's not going to be a success unless you help me. But this is what I would need if, you want it to be a success. And they were like, okay, great.
Penny drop. Oh my goodness. That was just gold. That was gold. Thank you for that, Mel. Oh my goodness. And I loved how she just had really good observations, of course, when she was here about hierarchy, but also just there giving her a little bit of Kiwiness and just sort of going around the corners of some hierarchy and asking for forgiveness later. That was quite cute, I have to say.
Yeah, it works though, right? And it helps the organization in the end because she wants what's best for them and for NEC, right? So,
and they want what's best, and they've helped in the way that was best for her, which is really great. Yeah, ask for what you want with a smile and give people an out. I thought that was also excellent advice that she gave to us.
Yeah, because you're not going to get that clear no, are you, necessarily?
No,
They really don't want to say no to you.
That's right. And to the point I was building on in there too, we talked a little bit about, them asking from head office ideas, solutions, strategies that work or that you're working on that Japan wants. So tell us. So if you're given that invitation, just take it up and actually do come through with some ideas and information, because Japan doesn't know everything. New Zealand doesn't know everything. Let's exchange. And that's all what it's all about, right? Little bits of what you do, right? And a piece of a process. It might be one piece. That's really excellent for Japan to know about. Yeah.
It's exciting to see that they're maybe they are moving away from recreating a Japanese company in New Zealand and expecting it to be a success. And I hope that New Zealand companies coming to Japan will take note of that and be like, wow, we cannot just pick up our company and start a new office in Japan and expect it to be a success. There's got to be some give and take here and learning from each other. And you're going to come out with something better. Like people often ask me, would you live in Japan or New Zealand? And I'm like, no, don't make me choose, because combined, it would be a kind of utopia country, right? If we could combine Japan and New Zealand. So an organization that combines Japan and New Zealand, what kind of amazing organization could that be?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So don't lose your Kiwiness, temper it. Don't lose your Japaneseness, temper it as well, or bring it up. Whatever it is, just both of them coming together is amazing.
Meet in the middle.
Venn diagram of another country. What's it going to be called, and how many islands will it have?
Where can we set this
Think
up?
about that. Awesome. I loved that episode. I hope it's been really fun for everybody listening as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mel, for coming on the show today. And we have one more wonderful jandal coming to you before our summer break. We're going to enjoy our summer break, aren't we, Catherine? Even if it is very, very hot here in Japan. Yeah.
Yeah, already extremely hot. So, we're going to bring you another one and then let you have a bit of a summer break like we will too.
We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you check out our guests' links in the show notes.
This podcast is brought to you today by Catherine O'Connell Law and Pod Launch with Jane. If you have a great story you think should be on the show, come and find us on LinkedIn or Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.
Mata ne!